This is Eagle Eyed Football, where we dissect the game that you love so dearly from an eagle eyed view. So if you're a GNA merchant, you might not like what we're about to share. But either way, sit back, relax, and get your popcorn ready. Eagle Eyed Football, like, share, subscribe.
Good morning and welcome back to Eagle Eyed Football. I have a very, very special guest here today. A good mate of mine, worked together in a Peru a couple of years back. Top lad, absolute top lad. But he's a Spurs fan, as you can see. So, Paul, thanks for coming on. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Pleasure to be here. It's raining in East London, but I'm not going to let that dampen my half-term spirits. Last day of half-term, so I'm just going to relax and take it easy.
Absolutely. As you know, we only have summer for 2 days at a time.
Absolutely.
Let's get straight into it. So, this season, absolutely phenomenal start. But what happened?
Well, what happened was Daniel Levy happened. And what I mean by that, it's very easy to just analyse this season per se, but if you need to be honest about where Tottenham's problems really lie, they lie with Daniel Levy and they lie with two transfer windows where we never signed anybody. You know, horrible cliche, and I hate using this one, but, you know, it's what happens when you don't invest in your club. At some point, it's going to come back and bite you on the arse. It was always going to happen. Pochettino said it was going to happen. Now, you know, you could try and paper over those cracks with a glamour manager like Mourinho, someone who is a serial winner. But if you don't invest in that manager and you don't invest in that team and you miss two transfer windows at an elite level of sport, it's going to come back and bite you in the arse. So that's what happened. It took a while because we had things like the Champions League, paper over some of the cracks. We finished quite well. Harry Kane kept scoring, you know, so it took a while for these cracks. But ultimately, you know, I was a Jose Mourinho fan. I didn't want him to be sacked. What he wanted, what Conte's talking about wanting, and what any manager who wants when they come to Tottenham is investment. And that investment didn't come from Daniel Levy. So our season ultimately went down the pan because of Daniel Levy. Because at the end of the season, we were still finishing the games with Harry Winks in midfield, Dele Alli in midfield, Son, who's a very hot and cold striker, still striking stone. You know, Hugo, who didn't have the best of seasons. And these are our good players. I'm not even talking about our bad players. Sanchez's, you know what I mean? Sanchez, Doherty's, Alderweireld, who's now off the ball. Eric Dyer, who was woeful. You know, these are players who should barely make the squad. Yet they were first team starters. And to my point is, these were players who all played in the Champions League 2 seasons ago. They should have been moved on. Look at Liverpool's Champions League team, and they won it. They've recycled players. They've moved players on. We haven't. So our great start, again, like many things, papered over the cracks, but it was never going to last. Real Tottenham fans knew that. I knew that. Make no mistake, I enjoyed it. Listen, being top at Christmas for 2 weeks was brilliant. It was better to be top at Christmas for 2 weeks than to be at the bottom. And it was all right, you know, because it made you think, it made you dream. And that's what we at Tottenham do. Unfortunately, we do it too much half the time. But it felt good to be in that position for a change. But was it going to last? No, of course not. Because there was no decent investment in the team. And that, as I said at the start, all boils down to Daniel Levy.
You mentioned, obviously, the lack of investment, even in the Pochettino reign. He managed to take you to a Champions League final. Do you feel like that was a bit of luck? Was it like great coaching? What's your views on that?
No, well, that was more than luck. If I'm being honest, that was the stars being aligned. That was the gods being with you. That was everything that could possibly go our way up until the final went our way. I mean, you know, and like I said, any true, honest Tottenham fan will admit that. You know, we got lucky against Man City in the final. We scored a goal in the last second of a football match against Ajax. I mean, crikey, you know, we had so many things go our way, and eventually there's this great saying, luck has a habit of running out. And it ran out for us in Madrid. So, you know, ultimately, we fans and we players, we were just glad to be there. It was the first one we've ever been to, or probably the only one we'll ever go to in a very long time. So we enjoyed the moment. But it covered over the glaring cracks in the squad, the lack of investment in the squad, the quality of players. You know, again, I don't want to keep picking on a player, but I'll give you the quintessential problem at Tottenham. Well, you know, one player, Harry Winks, who started playing a lot of the games towards the end of the season. Mourinho dropped him. Mourinho almost banished him from the squad because he's not good enough. Leicester wouldn't have him. I'm not even knocking him. Everton wouldn't have him. He's not a top 6 player. He belongs with your Villas and your Southamptons and your Norwiches. But he's a regular starter for Tottenham. And now you've got half our fan base who still love him because he's one of our own. You know, he come up through the ranks. He's a Tottenham boy through and through. That blind loyalty absolutely kills us at Tottenham. It kills us as fans, and it kills managers and coaches' delusions. And, you know, that's why Ryan Mason kept picking him. It was his mate who he grew up with. He offered them nothing, though. Ryan Mason, you know, Harry Winks is a classic example of what's wrong with Tottenham. Eric Lamela, the same. Eric Dyer, the same. I mean, we've got so many players like that. And what I'm talking about, first-team players here. You should be nowhere near it, Richard. These are players who should not be nowhere near the first team of a team with Champions League aspirations.
Absolutely. On Levy, now obviously we know that he doesn't spend.
He doesn't.
He's very tight. So would you say that getting Mourinho was the best decision then? Because normally Mourinho is the type of manager who requires spending because he wants a certain team.
Yeah, well, look, Mourinho obviously was looking for. It looked on paper like both teams needed each other. You know, both parties needed each other. Tottenham needed a glamour manager. Mourinho, after the Manchester United debacle, the way it ended, needed a glamour club. And I think he got some reassurances from Levy, like, look, I'll invest in you. And he did so a bit. He gave him Gareth Bale on 150, 300 grand a week, you know, paid half his wages. He gave him some players. All right, they weren't fantastic, but, you know, Doherty, Rodon, one or two others, you know. But they weren't the players that he wanted. But Mourinho obviously said, look, I'm going to try and work with this. I'm going to try and coach this. And he did, to a certain extent, coach something out of an underbelly. But we've got some bad eggs in that squad who couldn't be coached. Your Serge Auriers, your Moussa Sissoko's, your Harry Winkses. These are players who are really, really limited and who really shouldn't be near the squad of a team with first team Champions League aspirations.
Yeah. You mentioned Ndombele.
Sorry, just to interrupt there. I think you saw the Tottenham squad there and the Tottenham team this season, why we dropped them so badly, showed the limitations of not just Mourinho's management, but the limitations of our squad. I think Pep Guardiola couldn't get more out of this team. You know, Jurgen Klopp couldn't get more out of this team. This team is done. It's stale. And I think, you know, they're talking about that's one of the major stumbling blocks as we speak with, about Conte being appointed. He has said he wants some serious backing. He doesn't want 100 mil. He wants like 200 mil. He wants to rip this club apart and you know, really build a team in his own image because this team isn't good enough. Now, will Levy do that for him? His track record tells us no. His track record tells us he absolutely will not do that. But maybe, just maybe, his hand's been forced. You know, we're in the lowest European ranked competition next season. Our star striker wants to leave. The fans are really now on his back. There's a whole real big in-and-out campaign against Daniel Levy. Maybe his hand's been forced. And where he wants to take the club and the team and the brand, you know, he needs star power. Graham Potter isn't star power. You know what I mean? Managers like that have been linked. Conte is star power. But if you want star power, you're going to have to give star power Starbucks.
Yeah.
That's a terrible pun. But it'll be interesting to see if Levy now realises, well, look, we can't keep trying to do this on the cheap. Trying to do it on the cheap simply doesn't work.
Absolutely. Let's look at that aspect of Levy and doing things on the cheap. Well, because you've moved into a new stadium, and you also have the ties with the NFL.
Yeah.
How big a role do you think both those aspects have played in the lack of spending at your club?
They both played a real lack of a really important role in the lack of spending of our clubs, because it's quite clear Levy sees Tottenham as a business and not as a football club. No matter what he says, Tottenham is a business to him. It's a money-making business, you know. And we're not just talking the NFL. You know, we're coming out of lockdown. Do you know what the first big concert at Tottenham is this summer? Lady Gaga. It's sold out. £100 a ticket. You know,
wow.
that's what Levy's interested in. You know what I mean? And I get it. He's a businessman. You know, he wants to make money. I get it. But Tottenham Hotspur is not a business per se to the fans. Tottenham Hotspur is a football club. It's a club that we love. It's a club that we pass on from father to daughter, father to son. It's something that's engraved in you. I don't care if Lady Gaga plays at the Hotspur Stadium in July, you know. I care if we sign a brilliant, you know, if we keep Harry Kane. I care if we replace Hugo Lloris and replace Eric Dyer. That's what I care about. But, you know, Levy cares about, I'm not going to say he totally doesn't care about Tottenham. Of course he does. Of course he cares about football. But is he his priority? No. The brand is, the NFL is, the pop concerts are, the other events are. You know, Tottenham have just bought up like hundreds of properties around White Hart Lane. There's going to be more redevelopment. That's what they're spending their money. You know, that's what they're doing. We've got one of the best stadiums in Europe and possibly the world. We've got one of the best training setups, definitely in the world. But you know what we simply don't have, is a squad to match that. And at some point, we're gonna need that. At some point, we are really gonna need that. Otherwise, all the fancy stuff around it won't work. People are gonna have. We are a football team first, and that has to come to the forefront with business guys, with the chairman, and with the people around him.
Absolutely. Last few bits on both Levy and Mourinho, actually. This kind of ties in hand. So, obviously, the very strange decision was made to sack Jose before a cup final. Now, me, as a Palace fan, looking in, if you're going to want one manager for a one-off game, it's Jose. So that completely just confused me. But on top of that, do you feel like the sacking was also based on, say, Jose's man management style? Now, we mentioned Ndombele, who at the first couple of weeks, Jose had him going to a park or something, doing runs, and like he literally had him out in the cold and stuff. Do you think that played a part in this sacking? And obviously, what's your thoughts on him being sacked right before final?
Well, two things. First, Mourinho management is clearly a delicate chip for the modern day footballer. You know, if you want to look at, and I mean the very modern day footballer, because you know we are literally not even talking eras now; we're talking years. You go back to what some of the international players said about Mourinho. What Eto'o said about Mourinho. They bloody loved him. They bloody loved him. They would walk through walls for him. They absolutely loved him. You know, if you get on side with Mourinho, Harry Kane, even now, says, Mourinho, you made me a better player. And he did. He made him a much better player. You know, made him adapt his game and become a much more all-round centre-forward. But it's quite clear that some of the modern players, I'll give you your Orias, your Sissoko, Wicks, Delis, they didn't fancy him. They need more kid gloves around them. I'm not a fan of that. I'm like, you're being paid a decent dollar. Work with this guy who's won 23 trophies. Shut your mouth and get your head down. That's what I'm in, So sadly, it's quite clear that Mourinho grated on some of the more modern, younger football, even younger, because Sissoko young at all. There was an influence and a group in our team that simply didn't respond to Mourinho's management style, like at Manchester United. Sacking him before, like you said, 6 days before the final was absolute criminal. And like you say, like any fan would say, any strike, if there is one manager you want to see you through a one-off game against the best team in England, it's Mourinho. Why it was done then, we will never know. And the flip side of that is not only was it such a bad sacking, it was a bad appointment for Mason, because that was clearly PR. It was clearly, right, I need to give myself some time. I'll just put Mason in, and he's chopping them through and through. Remember I told you about the Harry Winks and Harry Kane kind of blind loyalty. We have a Spurs fan, he's one of our own. Suddenly there was a shield around Levy where it was a shield. Tottenham fans go, well, we can't have a proper pop now because, well, you know what? He's put Mason in, and Mason's one of our own. Mason was out of his depth all season. He picked up some good results. He had a couple of shockers, not just against City, against Leeds in particular. He had a shocker. Against Leicester, he had a bit of a shocker. He was only rescued by Gareth. He was quite clearly out of his depth. If you're thinking with your head instead of your heart, and you want to appoint someone from within the club, Chris Powell should have got the job, because he at least had some managerial experience and he would have known a bit more. He had a bit more nous about him. But picking Mason was an absolute shocker of a decision. And we saw by some of the things that he did, immediately bringing Dyer back in, immediately bringing Winks back in. Listen, they were let down, not because Mourinho was a horrible manager or a bad manager. They were left out because both of them were rubbish. They both made too many mistakes. That's why Mourinho dropped them but didn't play them.
So obviously you've mentioned Ryan Mason. It looks as if he's kind of got a tune out of Gareth Bale towards the back end of the season. What's your thoughts on Gareth Bale and just his application? Because there was rumours going around that he was just trying to get fit for the Euros.
Yeah, well, if I'm being honest, I think Gareth Bale is a completely another subject. It's another episode for you, Rich, because I think ultimately Gareth Bale used such a glorified training club this season to get ready for the Euros. Sorry, excuse me a second. I do think Gareth Bale ultimately, like I say, it's subject. And the reason why I say that, I think you need to look at him as a footballer. He's achieved so much in his life. He's won so much. He's made so much money. Quite clearly, something has happened to him at Real Madrid that's changed him as a footballer. And look, I hate quoting the enemy, in particular Arsene Wenger. But I really remember a documentary about Arsene Wenger, and he said the number one thing that you cannot coach in a footballer is hunger. That has to come from within. And it is quite clear to anyone who watches football that Gareth Bale has no hunger left in him. He has no hunger left in him, and that's fine. It is what it is, He's a 31-year-old, really talented footballer who's won 4 European Cups and this and that. And Gareth Bale came to Tottenham, had some really good games, had a few really good games, and he will leave nonplussed about it. Got fit for the Euros. He loves Wales. He loves, Wales are not going to play 9 games in the Euro, but if they get 4 or 5 out of them, that'd be great for them as a nation. And that's what he wants to do. He loves playing for his country. But as a club footballer, I think he's a different position. With Tottenham next season? No, I wouldn't, because again, we need to move on. We really need, for what he's costing us and for what he gives us. Yes, he gave us 14 goals, 20 games. They were brilliant. But what, 300 grand a week? That money could be spent elsewhere.
No, I agree. Definitely agree on that. Conte, looks like it's getting closer and closer, I believe. What's your thoughts on that?
Until it's signed, I actually don't think it will happen. I can't see. I think it's a worse match than Mourinho and Levy. Conte doesn't need the ag from Tottenham at the moment. He really doesn't. And there's every chance he could come to Tottenham and have his legacy and his reputation, or whatever you want to call it, ruined. Because he will come to Tottenham with demands, big demands. Like I said earlier, he will want 100 mil, 150 mil spending, plus everything on transfers. He knows what we've got there at Tottenham. He knows the squad's shit. We are shit. We're so shit we finished there at the moment. But I've got to put this in. Despite being that shit, we're still better than Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? And we finished above them. But Conte's going to look at our squad and realise this team needs investment. This team and starting, will he be back to do that? I don't know. Everything Daniel Levy has shown us, not just with Mourinho, but with Pochettino, Martin Yole, with Harry Redknapp, he doesn't back his managers to the tune of what they want. Yeah, he buys some expensive players, Sanchez 42, and then Bale 52, Lo Celso 36 mil. But he doesn't back, he buys Doherty for 13 mil. He buys Rodon for 9 mil. He doesn't back his managers. And there is little doubting. The fact is, Conte is a checkbook manager in the sense is he wants certain players and he will not play ball without those certain players. My point is, here you go, Rich. He will not take a cheaper alternative. He will say, I want this guy, get me this guy. Mourinho will say, well, what about player B or player C? And he will say, no, I want player A, and I want him now because he's important to my project and the way I want to play. I generally think, I don't see him coming until I see it signed, sealed and delivered, and him at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with the shirt up. I do not see him arriving because I just think ultimately him and Levy are a toxic match together.
Interesting times. Very, very interesting times. Just personally for me, I thought actually Nuno might have been the coach that would have gone to Spurs, but fingers crossed he comes to Palace. Fingers crossed. Right, before we talk about Arsenal, last week regarding the Spurs, I'll take him too. I will take it. I just want someone that can play football. Someone that can play football. We've had too many pragmatic managers in the past, personally, but we'll see. We will see. Before we talk about Arsenal, Harry Kane, your star striker. Obviously, he's come out and said that he would obviously like to move on. He's been very obviously loyal to the club. How do you feel about his decision, and whether or not you think he will actually go?
To be honest, I really see him leaving. I really see him going to Manchester City. I'll tell you what I really see happening right now behind closed doors, which we're not all privy to. I see him in the England squad And at every opportunity, at every drinks break, he grabbed a seat next to Raheem Sterling and Carl Walker in particular, because they used to play together, and said, "Tell me about life in Manchester. Tell me what it's like working with Pep." I do. And I think Walker was the same in his career, actually, when he went to Manchester City. 26, 27 minutes on for ages, hadn't won anything, and was just like, you know what? I need some silverware. And my God, he's got some silverware, something like, what, 5 bits of silver last 3-4 years. And I think Harry Kane's thinking the same. Realistically, I think Manchester City need him. Obviously, they've lost Aguero. Sterling's not firing anymore. Jesus isn't playing. He's nowhere near the striker anyone thought he would be. He's not banging goals. You know, Man City actually need that striker. They had Haaland. They need Kane. They really need a striker. And we know they've got deep pockets. 120, 150 is well. And especially if what they're saying is true, that they're going to throw in a couple of players plus 80 mil plus Sterling, Gabriel Jesus will suddenly make that deal more attractive to certain type of players, Tottenham fans. It certainly wouldn't make it attractive to me. But I could absolutely, if you said to me, will Kane be wearing the top at the start of next season? My answer is no. Do I blame him for leaving? No. Would I like him to stay? Of course I would. Any Tottenham fan would.
Now, it will definitely be a massive loss for your club. But it's how football is now, especially modern day football. Right, you mentioned Arsenal.
It is.
Now, I had some Arsenal fans on earlier on in the week, and they had this to say.
There seemed to be a lot of protests that were happening, especially across the bigger clubs. But your neighbours didn't seem to have a successful protest. Why do you think that was?
They're not a big club.
Simple as that.
That's the reality. They're not. Listen, them not down the road. They're not a big club. Simple. They're not a big club.
Simple as that.
You know, to be a big club, you need to have won trophies. You need a history, and as far as I'm concerned, they don't have one. We don't even talk about them boys down the road anyway.
Your thoughts?
Oh, you know what I say to that, Rich? I mean, like I said, we've just had one of our worst seasons in 5-6 years, and we still finished above them. Arsenal's odds to get relegated next year are stronger than their odds to finish in the top 6. I think that lot hold it down, shut their mouths, because you know what? They're in a really bad way right now. They're in a really bad way, and they've got no right to be even talking about us. Listen. Tottenham will always be London's glamour club, and I'm not even just talking about Arsenal there. I'm putting Chelsea into the mix, I'm putting West Ham mix. Tottenham, for whatever reason, and I think obviously because of history, first British club to win a European title, to win the double, the pushing, the type of football we play, the push and go ball, our heritage of star players, your Klinsmans, your Hoddles, your McKays, your Greens. Tottenham are a sexy club. You know, we've always a sexy club. We will be a sexy. That's why for a team that's not even won anything in the last 15 years, we're still a marquee club. When I do Super Sunday or whatever it is, it's not Arsenal. It's Tottenham, Man United, and Liverpool. That are the sort of 3 sexy clubs. What I mean by that, and I'm being serious now, you're talking about international reach. You're talking about your brand reaching out and all that. Tottenham brand across the world is much sexier than Arsenal's. Not quite as big as Liverpool's. Not quite as big as Manchester United. I'll be honest about that. But it's here, though, in terms of sexiness and brand and world appeal, it's easier. Bigger and better than Chelsea. I'm not even going to mention West Ham because they're pathetic in this mix, but definitely bigger than Arsenal's. Arsenal, yeah, they're big in Africa because they're big history with African players and their heritage getting that, and they're big in France as well for the same reasons. But you take those two nations out of them, or that continent and that nation out of them, the Arsenal bank is really weak because people still remember boring Arsenal. Remember one the Arsenal. People still remember that Arsenal, played a kind of football that you wouldn't whip on anyone. Their brand smells, and all the recent success that they've had still can't change it. They are just an unsexy club with an unsexy history. They will be, but in Tottenham's shadow.
Wow. You held no punches there. You held no punches there. So just on the back of that, do you think you'll still continue to finish above Arsenal?
I certainly do. Look. Of course, I hate Arsenal, and it's obvious. But it's quite clear. If you try to be neutral, right, it's quite clear for foreseeable future. Anyway, Arsenal are in a really bad place, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Arsenal. They're not much, but it's quite clear Arteta's not up to the job. It's quite clearly that bar one or two players, they're not really saying anything too tough. They've got 300 large a week on Adebayor, and what did he delivered? What, less than 10 goals for them last season? Barely 10 goals for them last season. They're in a bad place at the moment. They're in a worse place than us. So I have no doubt in the foreseeable future, Tottenham will definitely be finishing above Arsenal. And let's be wrong. And Levy actually does invest in the team and invest in Conte. And my God, we'll blow them away because Arsenal aren't doing that anytime soon. Arsenal are absolutely not investing to the levels that their fans want to see them unless, they hate their board as much worse than we hate our board. So they're in a much worse position than we are in.
Brilliant. What a thrilling conversation that was. Paul, thank you again for jumping on the channel. It's been an absolute pleasure. And you know what? Maybe I have to have you on with an Arsenal fan in future because that's the passion that we love to see. The passion we love to see. Like, share, subscribe. And yeah, this was your season review with Spurs. Thanks again, Maka. Have a good one.
Cheers, guys.